you very much.
Okay, thank you. Well, the composite nature of our thinking offers the key to many, many human mysteries. How is it, for example, that someone who is always selfless and willing to help everyone suddenly commits a cowardly, selfish act? Or conversely, how can it be that someone who thinks primarily of themselves and knows only one interest, self-interest, suddenly performs an act of self-sacrifice? It may not happen often, but it happens. And so there are countless other riddles or incomprehensibilities in so many people. The answer to all these mysteries can be found in the composite of our thinking. And of our thinking, our consciousness, because we humans, thinkers, we express ourselves primarily through our thinking, through the different aspects of manas. Let us recall again the 7 aspects of thinking, 7 aspects of manas. The relative highest, the ultimate aspect we call the inspiration, unity, and then the buddhi, intuition or insight, then the intellect, desire, vitality, feelings, emotions, and finally the physical aspect. And when we speak of peace within you, inner harmony, these 7 aspects work harmoniously together. But note, as we said before, there is a hierarchical union. The higher aspects, Atman, Buddhi, Manas, and also in this order, have a much wider, a much grander range of consciousness than the lower 4. The bodily consciousness does not reach beyond one's own body, whereas the atmic consciousness is universal consciousness. So, when there is real harmony in man, these hierarchical proportions are also expressed in a human being. And the higher aspects get more attention, they take charge of the lower aspects. In fact, there is a very essential difference between those lower 4 aspects and the higher 3. And we can express the difference with words personal and superpersonal. Superpersonal is not really an English word, I think, but we prefer this word to impersonal because that latter word has a connotation as if it were cold, while those superpersonal aspects are actually very warm, the warmth of our inner heart. The definition of superpersonal is awareness of interconnectedness. You live in the awareness, in the conviction that you are connected to others. Yes, that in deepest essence you are one with others, with all of life. The sense of separateness is the opposite. You live in the delusion that you are separate from others, that you have nothing to do with others, that the other is essentially different from you, and that there is no bond between you. If you understand the difference between these 2 concepts, you can also answer the question we asked before: why is the learning part in us conditionally imperishable? Well, personality is derived from the Latin persona, meaning mask. In ancient times, stage actors wore masks so the audience could see what role they were playing. And after the performance, you take off your mask, so that mask is perishable, is mortal, so to speak. In the same way, the true human being, the superpersonal human being, takes off his mask when he dies. Or rather, he doesn't die, the body dies, but the real human being still lives. they leave their personality behind, so the personality is mortal, temporary. It decays, it disintegrates into its constituent parts. The real human, the super-personal human being is immortal and overcomes death. And with each new reincarnation, they build themselves a new personality, which it weaves around themselves like a web. And although this new personality is built on the basis of what man has done and thought in previous lives, thus on the basis of karma, it is nevertheless a new personality. It is good that we realize that we created our personality ourselves, because if we didn't, we haven't that awareness, it would be difficult to achieve real inner peace. More on that later. So, it's about the higher aspects controlling the lower ones. And by control, I don't mean that they should be pushed away, but that they should recognize the leadership of the superior aspects. And the superpersonal aspects must be, so to speak, at the helm of the ship of consciousness that is man. So it's not the intention, for example, to push away or eliminate your feelings and emotions, not at all. But learn to control them and elevate them. For example, if you are jealous of your neighbor because he has such a nice car, and that feeling, that envy, sort of takes possession of you, then from the sense of connection and unity, the higher aspects of thought, or even already from the intellect, because you can reason that a car really doesn't make you happy, change that feeling into a kind of happiness, that you are happy for your neighbor. Today people think mainly from the point of view of desire, not to say that they are completely controlled by desires. Now desire in itself is a neutral force, which derives its color from the motive with which it is employed and the purpose to which it is directed. Is it a noble desire or a selfish desire? But precisely because man is so controlled by desire, there's never inner peace. For the characteristic of desire is that you want to have something, or you want to be something that you do not have yet, or what you are not yet. Or maybe you have it, but you want to have it in the future as well. And that means you don't have it now, because today is not tomorrow. And you are afraid to lose what you possess now, what you are now. For instance, you are afraid to lose your health, your youth. It is easy to understand that this is the most important reason for all unrest, all dissatisfaction. Even when a desire is satisfied, that restlessness remains, because the satisfaction only gives a feeling of contentment for a short time. There is a saying in Buddhism that expresses this very well. Satisfying your desire is like quenching your thirst with sea water. The more you drink, the greater the thirst. So don't think that desire will disappear if you give in to it. That's a great illusion. Now, you do need to suppress desire either, for you cannot achieve anything without the force of desire. It must, however, be guided, be in service to something greater, guided and directed by super-personal thoughts. Elevate, for example, desire for possession and power and luxury towards the desire for wisdom and happiness for all. Guide that desire upward by focusing on the higher aspects of thought. Use the infallible touchstone for this. Is a thought or a feeling, or a desire, personal or super-personal? Does it make you conscious of the connectedness with others, or does it push you deep into your own isolation? Now, you often may hear that people cannot be in peace with themselves because of the circumstances they are in. A stressful job, relationships on the rocks, your son or daughter with whom things are not going well, who is being bullied at school, for instance, etc. And we can understand that very well. Many people are somewhat inclined to look at others, and we often think that those others are better off with themselves and with their environment than we are, which naturally leads to dissatisfaction. And therefore, it is good to realize that we shape our personality, our character, by ourselves. This is another theme that is explained in Thinking Differently, the course Thinking Differently, in various lessons, and tonight I can only explain it in general terms. How do we get our character? Have you ever wondered about that? Is it the product of DNA, heredity? The facts show it is not, because DNA in a way determines our character. We, ourselves, make our character. We are the commissioner and builder of ourselves. We do that because we think certain thoughts, and thoughts are like living energies, which, like everything else in the cosmos, are based on cyclicity. They keep coming back to us. So, to use that example of that jealousy toward the neighbor again, if you think the thought, if you have that feeling of envy because your neighbor has such a nice car, then the thought is bound to come back. And of course, this applies to all the thoughts you think, intellectual thoughts, desires, ideas, you name it. And this is how you build a habitual pattern and how you make yourself, how you make your own character. So if you want to change your character, you have to start with your mind, with your thinking. You have to start thinking different thoughts. And that's why we called our course Thinking Differently. Nowadays, however, we often think contradictory thoughts, then selfish, then unselfish, and therefore our character is often a vessel of contradictions, a paragon of doubt and insecurities, not really conducive to our inner peace. Now, when we die, is that character gone? Well, the higher elements, the superpersonal aspects, are immortal and have their well-deserved spiritual rest. The lower elements disintegrate. But in a new birth, those lower elements are brought together by the superpersonal human being. The resting consciousness feels at a certain moment the urge to a material life, to go back to everything it left behind when it died. And in order to reincarnate, it has to put back together all those elements again, which happens on the basis of attraction. And thus, the new personality is formed. Awareness of that, and awareness is something different than mere intellectual understanding, then it remains a theory. Now, awareness of that contributes enormously to that inner peace. If you are dissatisfied with your character, you have no one to blame. Not your parents, not that irritating teacher at school. You have built yourself, you are the result of all the thoughts you have ever thought. But moreover, you understand that if you are dissatisfied with yourself, you have the opportunity to improve yourself, And that too gives you tremendous mental and emotional peace. You no longer feel powerless, like, I can't do that anyway. No, in essence, you are a monad. Everything is within you. You can become whatever you wish you were. But then, that environment, the surroundings, that can also be a source of unrest and dissatisfaction. That irritating colleague, the neighbor who is always making noise, that relationship that is so disharmonious, etc. Now, ask yourself the question, is it the environment or is it myself that disturbs my inner peace? Because what is your environment actually? Your environment, surroundings in which you were born, your country, your city, your work, etc., is the reflection of what you yourself are. When you look at your surroundings, you see yourself. And that may be difficult to accept. Your personality will often resist that, but we can explain it. And again, we use the law of cause and effect, karma, a word easily used by everybody nowadays, but whose true meaning has not yet penetrated very deeply, because if that were the case, we as a humanity would act differently than we do now. Even though we think every thought we think does not just come back to us, making a groove in our consciousness, it is exactly the same thing in the consciousness of others with whom we connect. You cannot think or act without making at least a connection with one other human being. But in most cases, it will be with many others. So because your thoughts make an impression both in yourself and in others, you forge a bond with your fellow human beings. Which people in particular do you forge a bond with? With those who have a corresponding characteristic. Football lovers seek out other football lovers, and intellectuals seek out other intellectuals. So, you make a connection with those you like or love. But note, that bond can also arise because you dislike something or somebody. You dislike football or nature. You detest farmers. In those cases, you also forge a bond. And that is why one of the Theosophical axioms is that love and hate are binding forces. In fact, every human being is like a psychological and mental magnet. And because of his character, he attracts those people who belong to him, with whom he has a bond. And do you think that bond is gone when we die? Certainly not. We are born where we have prepared a place for ourselves. And do you understand now that the environment is a reflection of ourselves, of our thinking? Do a test. Approach a neutral situation from a positive attitude, from a selfless attitude, and see what happens. The people in that situation, yes, the whole situation itself changes. In fact, your view on the whole changes. Your vision of the whole changes, and as a result, everything has completely different value, a different color. So by changing yourself, you change the world. Well, in this fact also lies the inner peace that you yourself can bring about. See the environment in which you live as something you have helped to bring about. You made it yourself. Accept that. That doesn't mean that's the best environment. the best environment that you live in the best country or in the most beautiful city? Certainly not. But it's the best we have brought about in our ignorance. We choose it for ourselves. Now, it would not be difficult to discover that there is room for improvement. Then choose the most super personal, the most noble, the most idealistic world you can imagine. And from that mental attitude, from that ideal, you approach your surroundings. From that ideal, you approach the people with whom you live and cooperate. In short, from that ideal, you live in the world. After the break, we will go into this in more detail, but now again, 3 minutes break, and then I will try to answer your questions. Welcome back, Mariska.
Yeah,
there are some questions, yeah?
Yes, there are some questions. A first question is how to change the patterns of your thoughts.
How to change the patterns of your thoughts? Well, I would say go to the course Thinking Differently. That starts in, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. But that's an easy answer. Well, next week we have a study, but in 2 weeks we're going to talk about ideas who rule the world, and then we go in more detail, going to speak about thoughts and what thoughts are. But thoughts are living entities, are living beings, very unconscious living beings, but nevertheless they are living beings, and just what I said in the lecture, they are inclined to come back to us because they are living beings, and all living beings manifest themselves cyclically. This they come and go and come and go. We feed thoughts with our mind, with our attention. So if we put our mind, if we give an idea of a thought a lot of attention, it becomes stronger and will come back more easily and faster, and in such a way that sometimes a thought can even take possession of our, So what we have to do is to first analyze our character, knowing which part in our character is the most important, plays the most important role. Is that the intellect? Is that desire? Is that our feelings? Is that maybe insight? Then when we have make an analysis of our character, then we should say, well, do I want to stay the one who I am? Or is there room for improvement? Maybe we can improve ourselves by focusing on the more superpersonal aspects in ourselves. What we should do is, every time a thought comes to visit us, when it appears at the horizon of our consciousness, and we know that it is a personal thought and we don't like that personal thought, we want to get rid of that thought, then we have to think automatically and immediately a thought of a other characteristic. What will happen is that the first thought will come back, but the other thought is, as it were, together with it. And then we have to focus on that second thought again, and the first thought will get less attention, and if we continue by doing that, at the end, the first thought will die, and the second thought will get stronger. That is a way to get rid of your personal, selfish thoughts. But there is another way which is more inspirational. This one is very good if you want to get rid of some thoughts, but there's another thought that is more inspirational, and it is to create for yourself an ideal. An ideal is made of thoughts, of course. So an ideal is super personal ideal, not an ideal, a personal ideal, but a super personal ideal of universal brotherhood, of world in peace, or whatever beautiful ideal you create for yourself. And that ideal should be always on the background of your mind. Yeah? So every thought you think will be directed, will be colored by the underlying ideal of universal brotherhood, and get a kind of impulse in that direction. So even if you go to the supermarket, or you get the garbage you set on the pavement or on the street or whatever, even those simple thoughts are colored by the underlying idea of universal brotherhood. And in that way, you change the whole frequency of your mind, and you receive other thoughts, and you will change your character and be another human being. And as a result, you'll get another environment as well. In the course Thinking Differently, in 3 or 4 lessons, this is elaborated very, very extensively, and just said it in a few words. But the main point is, think other thoughts. Don't fight with the thoughts you want to get rid of, because when you fight with them, you make them stronger. But think other thoughts. Think idealistic thoughts. Think thoughts of peace, of brotherhood, of compassion, of beautiful thoughts. Yeah, and then the other thoughts will have less focus or no focus at all. Won't get any food, and they can't grow, and at the end they will die off, or they will change to more spiritual thoughts.
I've got 2 questions still. The second question now is, you indicated that changing yourself is in line with changing the world. How can I see that in relation to countries where there is war and so much unrest?
Well, it doesn't help a country to conquer another country, because that is not the end of war. The only way to end war is that the mentality of the people who are involved, change. If you don't have any enemy, and if you don't have hatred, and if you see your other nation as a brother nation, if you know that in fact we belong to each other, well, then at the end the war will stop. So unfortunately, and I'm going to talk about that in 2 weeks and after the break also, but in 2 weeks I will extensively talk about that. But I can say now, the ideas we have, and we is humanity in general, the ideas we have create the world we are living in. And if we have ideas of hatred and of separateness and of, emotions out of our personality, desires, all those lower elements, and we can't control them, you make a kind of thought continent, a sphere of thoughts that one way or another must manifest itself one day in a situation of war. Yeah, because underlying all actions are thoughts, are ideas. So we have to start changing our mind. We have to start changing our ideas, not any longer ideas of personality, of selfishness, but we have to try to accept and to see the beauty of the interconnectedness of everything. It's far more beautiful to see how we are related to each other. And when we see that we are related to each other, there wouldn't be any war, because we cannot see the other as our enemy. So that's the solution.
Thank you. We go to the third question. this person says, I got into a conversation with someone about a quote from Rumi. Every heart is a sacred place. It doesn't matter whether it's a Muslim, Christian, Jew, or infidel. The universal message is love must reign. Can you tell something about what is meant by that love?
Of course, because in our heart, and I don't mean our physical heart, but in our core, our inside, the core, where we all come from. There are no Muslims, there are no Christians, there are no Hindus, there are no Buddhists, because that's the universal thing. We are one in our heart. And if you perceive that you are one with your brothers, with, in fact, all that lives, how can you be cruel? How can you be selfish? We are leaves of the same tree. We are parts of each other. There is no separateness. It's our blindness, our focus on our personality. That's why we think we are different from each other. Of course, we are different in our manifestation, and luckily we are different, because it would be a dull situation if everybody was the same in its manifestation. Now we differ in our manifestation, but in our heart, like Rumi said, are we one? We are the same. And if you accept that, if you perceive that, if you know that we are the same, of course you will treat your fellow human beings like a brother. Compassion, You will know that that he is a part of you, that you are coming from the same source. So it's very logical. So love or compassion is not an emotion in the sense of a sentimental thing. It's a fact in nature. It's the law of laws, as H.P. Blavatsky says. Compassion is the law of laws. It's the cement of the universe, Gottfried de Bruckers call it. Because if there were no love, superpersonal love, if there were no compassion, the world didn't exist.
Well, thank you. One of the persons who asked a question thanks you for the helpful answer already in the mail. And these were the questions for now, so you can go.
Okay. Well, the last part. We ended the previous section with the stimulating